took 44% of their shot attempts from three-point range in the first round. That was most of any team in the playoffs, and about the same tonight, 39 attempts of their 90 overall shots. What do you do to combat that for a team that has a guy, particularly like Isaiah Thomas, who's so good at penetrating, and then they move the ball as well as they do?
Well, it's really tough because, as you touched on, Isaiah Thomas is so good penetrating, and you try to take away the gaps from him penetrating, but then you got knockdown shooters, and you got guys like Al Horford, Crowder, making big shots in a timely manner that's building the momentum during the course of the game. So it's just unfortunate, and they have to do something on that perimeter.
Yeah, you mentioned at the start in the pregame about Daryl in Houston with the analytics of all of this. The mid-range game versus, the three-point stretching of the floor by the Celtics. I thought the backcourt of the Wizards were the backcourt of the Wizards. They were who they were. They got off to the quick start, but what has developed in the last few years under the constant improvement with Brad Stevens and his players are the chip on their shoulders from Avery Bradley to Crowder, where they've been seen as one-way players, to prove that they're more than that offensively as well. The confidence that comes with the way they shoot the basketball, the willingness to share it, to just move it to the open man, the confidence to take those shots. I mean, it was all present today in that second half. So that second half shows me exactly who the Celtics were, and the first half shows me exactly who the Wizards are. And now it's who can hold the most minutes together on the floor and dominate their style. And Celtics got back to it quick being at home. We'll see if the Wizards can answer that.
Crowder's 6 threes was a career high, postseason or regular season. Something else the Wizards may want to look at for Game 2 and moving forward is taking advantage of the times when the Celtics had their 3 guards in, Smart and Bradley, along with Isaiah Thomas. And when they try to hide Thomas defensively on a bigger player, Washington really didn't take advantage of those matchups.
Absolutely, and I was wondering who Isaiah Thomas was going to be guarding in that backcourt. He wasn't guarding either guys, whether it was Wall or Bill. He found himself a lot of the time on Porter. So in that situation, Porter has to get to the post and not settle for a jump shot or things like that. You got to make them pay. You got to try to get them in foul trouble. You got to try to get the defense of Boston to come down and double team and open up opportunities for your teammate.
Not just Porter, but Kelly Oubre, Bojan Bogdanovic. He guarded all these guys. Bogdanovic is nearly a foot taller than Isaiah Thomas.
Right, and when I even looked at in the second half, there were stretches where it was Rozier, Smart, and Isaiah.
Yeah.
That's about as small as they can go. Putting Crowder at the 4, Crowder to me, far more physical than anyone that the Wizard had once Markieff Morris went out the game. Oubre, Porter, they don't want to wrestle with Crowder. They just don't. And so that gave, I think, the edge to Coach Stevens to be able to even swing even smaller, which then forced Bradley Beal and John Wall to have to deal with Rozier and Smart, and it really gave Isaiah more room to hide on the defensive end of the floor.
Really, really interesting because at the beginning of the game, remember, they pulled Gerald Green because the Wizards seemed to be so much bigger than the Boston lineup. And then, by the second half, you had Boston going as small as they could possibly do.
Play to your strength is what I say when you start talking about going small. Made them more effective offensively. One of the ways they got back in this game was to pick up the pace, create easy opportunities. And touching on the point as far as Isaiah Thomas not being forced to play defense, you got to make him play defense. You can't allow him to stand around. One of the ways to equalize great offense is to force the great offensive player to play a little bit of defense. It makes him tired. You can possibly get the guy in foul trouble. There are a lot of different ways that you can force this guy to be a defender and not allow him to sit around, rest on the defensive end of the floor, and be able to score the basketball and create for others.
And at least he's having to chase, well, not in this one. A lot of these possessions, the guy he was guarding was just standing in a corner.
Absolutely, and you want to see that guy slashing and being an option in the offense. And, you can't have Isaiah just, like you said, just hiding like that, man. You got to make him pay for that because he's going to be extremely fresh on the offensive end, and you don't want that if you're the Washington Wizards.
Yeah, and that was probably the first out of the 3 plays we saw Bradley Beal get a chance to get a switch onto Isaiah in that pick and roll for the first time. Most of the time he was off on the weak side, which
is a luxury.
It's a luxury.
Yeah, just resting on the other end. Interesting to see if Scott Brooks comes up with a counter to that move for Game 2 and moving forward.